So we're going to move on to level B, and that's our second level, and that's called Essentials, Etiquette, and Ear Training. This level becomes a little more schooly in that we do add a lot more writing in this particular level. I unfortunately, this has been a couple of years since we had this level in our home, so I kept those workbooks actually for several years, and then just recently, before I knew that this was going to be virtual, I think I purged those particular books. And so again, as I said earlier, our house was in a little bit of a disarray when we came to this level. And so here is my son working on one of those workbooks in his swimsuit. I actually don't recommend this. I wish at this point that I would have insisted that at least for some of these, at least for a very short time, to be sitting at a table and sitting properly and working. His pencil grip was okay, but I wish during these particular school lessons that I would have established more of a rhythm um, and stuck to more of a schedule, because as we've gone through some of the other levels, I've almost had to go backwards with him because I didn't establish some of those routines early on. And so in level C, there is a lot of writing, and if it becomes too difficult, there's a couple ways to break the writing down. You can, for example, this is one of the scissor pages that a child colored. You could, if this was too much for a child, I mean, this for my son, he actually, I think my younger daughter colored this one, but my son, I think, refused to color this picture because it was too much space and he just didn't think he could color that much. And you can take a marker yourself and go around the outlines or go around the outside edges for them, and then it kind of it's a little bit less space and it shows them really where the edges are. You can also do hand over hand, so where you help them. You can break it up and say, well, let's just color the top half. You can break up, so if there's 2 or 3 writing assignments scheduled for the day, you could do one after breakfast and maybe one after lunch, and maybe just try to increase the time that they're working on those writing skills. The book list for level B includes, this one has, like I said, some more workbooks. And then there are also all these read alouds. I'll go through some of these books here in just a minute, but the read alouds, I did want to point out that in this particular level, they are important and there are some skills that are worked on with them, but they aren't necessarily tied to the rest of the lesson. So like in level A, you really needed to do those books in order, but if you got the little engine that could, if that was scheduled next week and you couldn't get it at the library till the following week, in this level it would be fine to switch the read aloud books from one week to another. This level uses a couple of my first books, so a book about the ABCs and a book about your body. Then there's a book about animals, and they aren't there every week. So if you're looking at, so a lot of times people will get this list and they can't find where they are. They're scheduled for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks throughout the curriculum, not the whole time, but they are scheduled for more than, say, just 1 week, and that's why they're included in the core curriculum and not the read alouds. Big Thoughts for Little People is this book, and it goes along with the alphabet lesson, and there are little for each one, it talks about a virtue or character trait or something that they can improve upon that corresponds with the letter that they're working on for the week. Then in this level, the Bible is this beautiful book called A Child's Garden of Bible Stories, and it'll tell you when to read these. You'll want to make sure when you complete this level that you hang on to this book because it's going to show up again in Simply Classical Level 2. There are some flashcards, and then there is a craft book, which unfortunately I let a friend borrow and I wasn't able to get it back from her, but I took the craft book. This is the kindergarten book, but it's the same for level B and level C. In level B, the crafts they tie to the letter. So for example, F is for fish, and you make a little fish. And so what I did is I actually tore the book apart and stuck them in here because it was easier for me to pull out one of the instruction pages one at a time instead of having the book out. I could take that out and put all the supplies together, and sometimes my older daughter could actually help a younger child with the crafts instead of going through the book and what page is it on and what craft are we doing. I could just have it all ready. I typically with the crafts will like I said, print out the templates. It tells you exactly what color paper or something that you need. And then for example, this fish craft, you're supposed to cut out little dots to make the fish look like this. And I bought this little 1-inch puncher, which was super helpful. And I just had a bag ready, and I think my younger daughter made about 5 of those in her spare time. So it was something that kept her busy while I was working with other people. But I put all the craft supplies for that particular craft in a bag with the instructions, and they would be ready to go for the week. A couple of the other crafts that are in this one that I've got some completed ones. There was, C for corn, and I also bought a 1-inch square punch to cut out these squares for the corn. My older daughter decided she wanted to make a fish, so I think she was probably 6 or 7. Compare that to the preschoolers one. She liked to fill hers in a little bit more. There was a gumball one, and they also told you to use circles, but my son did not want to glue circles, so he decided to use those little those dot markers. So there's different ways that you can adapt the crafts. In this level, they introduce one of the names of the title is Etiquette, and it uses the Please and Thank You book and the best first book ever, and then How Can I Help? And you go through it. Those 3 books are scheduled in different phases for teaching manners and things like that. It was one of my favorite things in this level. There's also a Child's Garden of Songs, and then the Child's Garden of Verses, which is a poetry book, which is by Robert Louis Stevenson. And on this CD, there typically were a lot of songs from that poetry book that they're going to be learning in this. So I would have my younger daughter go in her room and play for 30 minutes, and then I put it on a little iPod, the CD, and she could listen to those poems while she was playing, and I could be working with another child. We have for our letters, there's the alphabet book. Oh, I'm sorry, that's in level C. These 2 books belong in C. They're coloring books. There's a numbers book and a letter book. And then there are those rod and staff books, Counting with Numbers and Adventures with Books. And then there were Bible pictures to color. And then from level A, you're going to hang on to your book, the prayer book, but that is actually where, no, that's not right. The prayer book that you used in A shows up again in level B. And then there are 2 books, Do It Carefully and Everywhere We Go, that are scheduled for an 8-week review. So again, if you're looking for those in the curriculum, you won't find them until the end. There are also suggested resources for this level, and I ended up buying a lot of them at Rainbow Resources. And starting in level B, I bought this box at Michael's. It was $5 or $7, and it has a little tray, and I'm able to put all the workbooks in it. And then in the tray, I was able to keep, they're sandpaper letters, and there's uppercase, and I think these were all just uppercase. I don't think we had any lowercase ones, but they sell these cards at Rainbow Resources. And then I had these little chalkboard ones that she liked to trace in. And we have some beads for counting. I think that's all for this level. Oh, and then I had bought these stamps these letter stamps, and I would just stick the stamps in her box, and she would sometimes just on her own volition just, you know, stamp her letters. I would have her just go do it while I was working with another child. This desk chart also comes in this level. Oh, and then one thing, it suggests wiki sticks. They at Rainbow Resources, they have these little cards, and they're the alphabet cards, and then you can form the letters with the wiki sticks, but you can also form the letters with Play-Doh. And so I always kept a little jar of Play-Doh in there in the box, and she could, again, something that she could do off to the side while I was working with somebody else once I had taught her her instruction for the day. And so this is kind of what she would do for her little setup. She would stamp, she could write it on here, she could trace the letter on here, and this is something that she could work on independently. And we did that through level B and through level C. You know, as I mentioned before, in this level, we are coming for, you know, we are becoming a little bit more of a student here, but we do still want to keep the lessons short. I remember when I first looked at this kind of seemed like a lot because there's a lot going on here, but when you really break it down, nothing really takes that long. And it really created some, by the time when the lesson I learned from my son, as I had a little bit more structure for my daughter, and I was really able to appreciate everything that was in this because I didn't have to think of it. It was all already, anything that I would have wanted to put in there, it was all already scheduled for me. So now I can look at some questions for, oh, I wanted to show you one thing. My daughter liked the Pokey Little Puppy, and one day the next year she painted this picture, and she came over and it just reminded me so much of the Pokey Little Puppy. There's the strawberries that they're trying to get to, the mud, you know, the mud tracks that they were going through, and she just decided to make this painting in her own free time after reading that story for probably a year on continuous repeats. Okay, let's see. Are these levels A, B, and C in conjunction with the national standards? Does each level provide assessments to test mastery of the fundamental skills being taught? Cheryl, I think I'll let you handle that one.
We seek to exceed the national standards. So we don't go by Common Core, we don't limit ourselves at all. I found when I was homeschooling that oftentimes the state or national standards were far less than what I wanted for my children. So you'll have to look at your individual state or whatever you're looking for with your standards. But yes, we do have a pre-test and a post-test. When Christine mentioned the assessments at the beginning, we suggest printing those out before you take them so that you can take them at the beginning, and then you can take them at the end to see which skills have truly been mastered. So I hope that helps.
And so, oops. Oh yeah, so this is what she's talking about, and it's in every single curriculum guide. Okay, I guess we can switch back. Oh. Okay, so are there any other questions relating to A or B before I move on to C?